they have a worship area. Like it's a sweet green room. It's like something the Beatles or the Stones would stay in at a concert, right? But they're just having normal conversation. Like, where is this coming from? It's coming on this. So I went all around the church, and finally I found it back there, and I couldn't believe it. Yeah, just up and across.
I keep meaning we need to get some kind of those acoustic sound panels.
Yeah,
because it's still pretty cavernous in here
to kill some of the sound.
Yeah, a little echoey.
So what would you do? Would you put it like on the door and the
you can
the two walls?
The walls, yeah, you can get them in either 24 by 24 squares. You can get them in bigger things, but something to just dampen the sound.
Yeah, I mean, just even a few of them would work. If you put one there, maybe one or two there, and a couple there, you'd be fine. Because this is. I mean,
that'll do.
It's your background.
Right. Does it make that big a difference when you have that?
It does.
Oh, yeah. Does it?
Yeah. Like if we just snapped our fingers right now and they were up, I would sound in your ears completely different than what I do now.
You hear the little bit of a ring and a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
That's just because the sound is going everywhere. And once it hits that, it just dies and nice, soft.
Absorbs the echo. Yeah.
We're learning less.
It's okay.
Yeah, we are.
Bro. Gotta start somewhere,
we're getting there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Hey, this is BK in DC with the ABC podcast, hanging out at the studio at Summit Lending. We've got our great friend, Mr. Les Norman, in the house.
What's
right
up?
On.
Welcome, guys.
Les. Good to be here,
You're talking about great friend. I thought you were going to be talking about DC. So,
He's a good friend.
I'm glad to be in there somewhere.
Hey, man, we're super glad to have you. So quick intro for Mr. Les Norman here. So here we go. Let me know if I miss out on anything, okay?
You're good.
So here we go, everyone. Former Kansas City Royal from 1995 to 96, host of the Killer Show, Breaking the Norm, radio show and podcast, keynote speaker, certified life coach, family, Kristin, your lovely wife, sons, Mark and Tate, and of course, most importantly, past winner of Wheel of Fortune.
Yes.
Right? Bro.
Yeah.
I would have led with that.
That is a resume, man.
Well, because I speak a lot, people want your bio, and I'll put in the email, I put as many things as I can and say, don't use it all. Just pick out what you want. It's the first thing they always go to is like, I don't care about all other stuff. I just want to know about Wheel of Fortune.
It's huge. I was telling my family this morning. So back in the day, 80s, early 90s, my grandparents literally based their schedule around Wheel of Fortune. This is no joke. It was like local news, and then it ran into Wheel of Fortune, and they would base dinner times and everything.
Supper time.
Supper, not dinner. Supper time.
Understand your generation you're talking about.
Right. And they even had a framed picture. I forgot about this. They had a framed signed picture of Vanna White on top of their TV.
What?
No joke. No joke.
Seriously?
That's selling out to the show, man.
Right.
I know Les kind of like, oh yeah, Wheel of Fortune, that's part of my thing. When I saw you speak at the chamber event, you were like, somebody had that picture for your main picture to introduce you, and you were like, oh man, I can't believe you used that picture of me. That's your main picture on your website.
Yeah.
So I don't feel bad for you at all.
That's my bride runs our website, so that will change 3 times in the next month. Just kind of floats in and out. So you just caught it at the right time, I guess.
That's amazing. And we'll get into leadership and about the podcast, ABC, always lifting people up, being positive and things like that. So real quick, that thing actually started on a bet from your son.
Did. My son, who's 17 now, Tate, it was when he was 11. We're sitting on the couch, and I was just rattling him off because I've been watching it since I was little. It was when it rained, I was inside watching either baseball or Wheel of Fortune.
Right.
And then I kept doing crossword puzzles and watching Wheel of Fortune while I was playing because it kept my mind sharp. And, I always want to be thinking through because when we get tired or hungry, your faculties come down a little bit.
Exactly.
And so I kept getting them, and I'll give you the short version, but he said, my son was sitting next to my wife and I was on the other side. And he said, Daddy, you need to let us have the last puzzle. Seriously. Cause the bell dinged, and then you could, $1,500 per or whatever it was. And then they'd go one at a time. So I went in the kitchen, started chopping food up, started chopping vegetables and making dinner. And there was only like 3 tiles left. Yeah. And I'm standing there just suffering. Like, come on, you got it. And then I just blurted it out. And he stands up and he says, that's it. You're going to be on the show. I'm like, okay, yeah. He's like, no, I'm serious. You got to make a video. And I said, you've done the research? And my wife said, yes, he's done the research. and you're going to make a video. We were talking about it. So, okay, how many people send in a video? He said, about 1 million. I said, what are those odds? And it was more rhetorical. What are those odds? And he answered 0.0003%.
Okay, Tate.
Yeah, he'd done the research. That's why he's my resident genius. But so the other thing I'd add is that I told him I would do it. A month later, he comes in from cross-country practice and said, hey, did you do it yet? And I said, do what? What did I do? What did I forget? Like, did you make the video? And, we try to teach those we love, lead by example, teach integrity, all those things. And he said, well, if you didn't do it, you're a promise breaker. Like, I could literally feel the sword go through my my chest and back. And so we went upstairs, did a video. And then the last part I'll say is after we recorded it on his iPad, it's a 30-second video. Right. And he said, okay, there's 3 things you need to remember before I hit send. Number 1, you will be on the show. You need to understand that. Number 2, you're taking me out of school because I'm going with you to California. And number 3, because it's my idea, we have 4 people in the house. I want 25% of the winnings, the cash winnings.
Oh, you're joking.
No.
He's
okay.
No,
So
he was on it.
But time out. Yeah. This is your son also who does the gaming.
Yeah.
Who has turned that into like a business at 17.
Almost a business. Yeah. He'll go pro next year at 18.
Yeah. So Tate's no joke.
He's no joke. I mean, like last night, our printer died. We had another printer. I was doing something else. So my wife said, Tate, you gotta take a break in your game, get our printer set up.
Right.
She was fiddling around for about 45 minutes, and in like 30 seconds, he had it all ready to go. And he's just a genius. But so they ended up calling. I tried out in Kansas City when they came. They called me back. I made it, went out, and we won that trip to Costa Rica, which was amazing. Wow. And that was incredible, but almost 12 grand in cash. So I had to put $3,000 in his account. And
so straight up, he didn't let you forget.
Oh, no. Well, I wouldn't have because I already blew it and told him I'd do it. And then I forgot.
Right.
But that was my doubt. I didn't think he was going to do it. And it's amazing how, whether it's our brides, girlfriends, kids, especially little kids, how much they teach us and how accountable they keep us. And he didn't mean it in any kind of negative thing whatsoever. Like, Daddy, you're a promise breaker. It was a joking thing, but behind it, it's like you decide whether you're going to keep your word or not. And of course, he didn't say that. So I made it. The day I found out I made it, I ran to. He had a cross country meet. And he's standing by all his friends, and I don't want to embarrass him, but I'm like, dude, you were right. I just got the call. We're going to California. I'm going to be on Wheel of Fortune, and he's standing there straight facing me, like I have friends here. Can we do this later? Right. And so I said, aren't you excited? And then he said, this is a great ending for this. He said, look, I told you you'd be on. You're taking me out of school. I want the money. And then he stone-faced says, and besides, Daddy, I believe in you.
Wow.
Oh, I started bawling right there. I'll just see at the finish line. I can't. And so I took off, and Kristin's like, just go. And I'm standing there by myself sobbing. But it was a great time, and he made some money.
That's an amazing story. Yeah. That's an amazing story. Well, that comes straight from the parents.
It sounds like that kid's got some pretty good parents.
Yeah, he definitely has good mama. That's for sure. And there's the one thing I'd add is there's a lot of things I learned from that. But when I got there, I mean, you get $1,000 just for showing up. I mean, if you stink it up and my first 2 roles were bankrupt and lose a turn.
Okay.
And the people, one right and left, one had gotten one had gotten the other. I'm like, oh, well, I won't tell anybody when this is going to air.
Right. Just let it go.
Yeah. But I remember I was the 6th one they taped that day, the 6th show.
Wow.
And that's because the guy that was on my team drew a number 6. So we had to wait all day and watch every episode. We get there at 7 a.m. and it was like 5:15 when we recorded. And I remember standing in the bathroom, I'm freaking out. And what are you going to do? Strategy and all this. And finally I said, look, man, this is a once in a lifetime thing. You're panicking over something like this. Right. How about you just relax and enjoy this gift that you have to be able to do that?
Right.
And so I ended up having fun because at the beginning I was kind of freaked out, but then I calmed down. And after that second puzzle, I ran the table the rest of the show. And
awesome,
my son made $3,000.
That's amazing.
And I went to Costa Rica with my wife.
Well, there's a couple of lessons in there, but one of them, like when you said to the guy, let's just enjoy this for what it is. This is an opportunity that most people don't get.
Yeah.
Like you can take that frame of reference and put it into just about anything.
You can.
Like, if I'm stressing out this morning, making sure that our tech is working good for this podcast.
Right.
And I'm freaking out. I'm waking up extra early to make sure that I get here and everything's going right. First of all, like we're hanging out with our buddy Les.
Right.
We're doing a podcast with best friends, getting to share some really cool stories with some friends. Like, chill out. This is fun. Most people don't get to do this. Let's just enjoy it.
So I should have called you at 3 a.m. when you were awake. That's the thing about Bobby and I, and everyone should know, like, we're kind of perfectionists when it comes to certain things. You know, we're on the outside, we seem like we're super chill and, you know, cool, which we are. But man, we want everything to like work out great, and we don't want to disappoint anyone, right?
So, and what you guys do, though, you have to be meticulous. You got to be right on, and then combine that with really enriching and helping other people in their lives. And so it kind of all goes together. But people in life will learn lessons if they humble themselves and be open to learning those lessons. But if you think you know everything, and if you think you got it and try to take control of everything, you end up kind of living in emptiness, or you're anxious a lot or worried a lot. And so that's one of the many things I love about you guys, is that you focus on helping other people. You focus on loving people. I mean, I think the last 10 conversations I've had with you guys, at some point we've talked about somebody else. Both of you are like, hey, how are you doing? How's your family? How are things going? To the point where I'm trying to ask you how you guys are, and you keep asking me questions. But I think we both know that's what the world struggles with today, is loving other people. And you guys do that well, both in your personal lives and in your business. And I really appreciate that.
No, we appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
And a lot of it is life lessons. You know, we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, maybe some lessons that you learned, you know, coming up through the minor leagues, some of the lessons that you learned being a big leaguer, and, you know, how did that transcend to being a leader in the outside world, you know, with speaking and your faith and church and leading others. So there's so much into that. And the thing that Bobby and I always talk about is, you know, everyone has something going on in their lives, right? And especially the past couple of years, you always need more positivity, right? You need a foundation to go back to that know that everything's going to be okay.
Yes.
Right. Yep. So that really helps us get through, because no matter what business people are in, you know, you're going to go through struggles, but you have to be around like-minded people that are positive, that are going to lift you up. So on that day that you're not having your best day, you have your buddy Bobby that's going to bring you out, or if Bobby's, you know, having a down day, and vice versa. So that's what it's about, man. So we really appreciate you being here. And speaking of which, so why don't you touch base a little bit on coming up through the ranks a little bit? Maybe, was there a few lessons learned going through the minor leagues? Because, you know, we're all athletes. You know, Bobby and I wish we would have had one day at one inning in a big league.
A cup of coffee,
right? Exactly. Fantasy camp doesn't count, but I mean,
it's close though. It gets you close though.
It gets you close. But what were some of the lessons that learning coming up through the minor leagues?
Great question. When I first signed, I'd never hit with a wood bat before, and coming out of college, my junior year, I was drafted by Boston and was an All-American, and we lost in the championship game of the NAIA World Series, blew a 5-run lead, by the way, 5-0, and blew it and gave up 7 in the last 3 innings. But there was a part of me that I'm going to play in the big leagues. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be famous. And my head was not, I wish I could say my whole life, my head was screwed on straight, but I did not have a lot of humility. So I was drafted in the 23rd round by Boston and didn't sign. And the original offer was $2,000. I went to summer ball after, like, well, for $2,000, I'm a junior. I've got the power on my side here. And I didn't have anybody in my life my dad was gone. I had a stepfather, but him and my mom were doing their own thing. And so it was just try to figure it out on your own.
Right.
So I didn't sign and went to summer ball and was tearing it up and was winning the Triple Crown of summer baseball, the Collegiate League in Illinois. And they upped it eventually to $30,000. But by then I had so hardened my heart and felt like I was so slighted that I said, nope, no thanks. If you don't come back and call me about baseball. We can talk, go to dinner, but don't talk to me about baseball unless you come back with $50,000 instead of $30,000.
Oh, wow.
And that's pretty arrogant. That's really arrogant.
Right.
And you can feel free to agree when you're not. I mean, that's,
right.
I try to teach my kids lessons off of those mistakes. And so when I signed with the Royals the next year, and I love that God has a sense of humor, because the first amount that Boston gave me was $2,000, upped it to $30,000. The only offer I got from Kansas City was $2,000.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
And so it was a message right there. Like, it's not about the money. It's not about you. So decide what you're going to do.
Right.
So I signed, I went out, and there were guys like second baseman. There's a guy named David Haber, who's our second baseman. And he's from California. You got these Texas and Florida and Southern United States guys that play year round. And I'm from Chicago. So you're getting 40 games in,
right?
And some of it's in snow in March.
Yeah.
And I had to learn how to hit with a wood bat because I was trying, if you squeeze it, you guys know this because you hit with wood even in fantasy camp. The harder you swing, the tighter you grip, it deadens the ball, you break bats, and that's not fun. Right. And I was struggling. I was hitting 169, and Tom Poquette was our manager. And I said, look, I'm playing sparingly. This is not how I thought it was going to work out. Obviously, there's a lot that I need to learn. So I am going to wipe out everything I know, and I'm going to do everything that you tell me to do because there's not a whole lot worse than 169.
Humility lesson number 2.
Right. Number 2, humility lesson, because I'm failing at baseball for the first time in my life since I was 7 years old.
Right.
Never failed at baseball. I mean, yeah, you strike out, do things like that, but high school, winning a state championship and being on all-star teams and all that stuff. Playing on the Olympic team after high school. All those things. And now all of a sudden I'm back to the bottom of the barrel. But I feel like as a man of faith, I can't be the most moldable until I empty myself of me and think of other people. So I did everything that Tom Poquette taught me. And about a week later, I had gotten injured, but came back. And my first 2 at-bats were outside fastballs. And I hit them over the right center field wall for home runs. So that's how this works.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
I got my average up to about 245, but 2 big doses of humility right there. Learning to play for the name on the front instead of the name on the back.
Love that quote.
Yeah. It's some people think it's cliche, but we all need to hear it. Yep. And so, then rising through the ranks, I went from getting injured, almost getting released to 3.5 years of that day of walking on the stadium field at Kauffman for the first time. So a lot of humility, a lot of grind, learning how to take care of your body, showing self-control. You know what I mean? Right. You always play with your body, but if you don't use your mind, it's going to fall apart. You have to be well-rounded in all those areas. And so, lessons were a lot of humility, taking care of yourself, and understanding that you will be a better athlete when you stop thinking that it's just you instead of playing with and for the other 24 guys that are with you.
That's an awesome answer. Because wouldn't you agree that, baseball is such a humbling sport, right?
Yes.
1 minute you're on top of the world, the next minute the ball falls out of your glove, right? So don't you think that's pretty common with a lot of young athletes coming through the ranks? Because ever since elementary school, high school, college, all that, they're rock stars, right?
Yeah.
And then they come into the minor leagues, which is
they're roadies,
itself, right? And they're roadies, and you do that. That's a big check, and I think that's a lot of those guys who don't make that mental mind shift. That probably the mental part of it keeps them in the minors and not making it to the big show.
Right. There are millions of guys, and my son's older team were a showcase baseball team, and this is their junior year, just finished up their junior year. So this is when they're going to get recruited. So now we're talking to college coaches, and I keep telling them over and over again, you have to be humble. You have to work hard. You have to make sure that you build your character first instead of just, this game will humble you just because, we have a shortstop that's really good. And I keep telling him, look, you're an excellent player. You're going to play in college as long as you stay healthy and keep your grades up. The problem is what will separate you and make you successful is you have to understand there are 500,000 shortstops out there that are your height, your weight, you're slower, you do have power, but they're all wanting the same thing. And the thing that makes you different is when you move up, will you work hard, will you stay passionate, and once you get there, will you have the emotional capacity to not let the game get surreal to you? So many guys are talented to play in the big leagues. So many guys. But the one thing that keeps most of them from getting there is that the game gets too big for them and they can't handle it mentally or emotionally.
Wow.
Well, I think that's a perfect transition to how that translates to any industry in the rest of life.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone can grow up and you can be talented and you can be smarter. But if you don't position yourself mentally and spiritually and physically, whether it's doing mortgages or selling in real estate or working in insurance or anything, or baseball, it doesn't matter. If you don't have all those things working in harmony, there's no possible way that you can live and feel fulfilled, not only succeed, but feel fulfilled. I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. So I'd like maybe you to jump into the conversation of, and you started to go there, but I've heard you say this phrase several times, and we say it too with our teams, but the phrase servant leadership.
Yes.
I'd like for you to speak a little bit about what that means and how those lessons in the minor leagues and growing up and being humbled brought you to that phrase and that mantra for the rest of your life.
Well, I'll start with this saying: servant leadership only comes when you have a change of heart. And we're sinful creatures by nature. We're selfish creatures by nature. I mean, we're born in gimme, 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 gimme. I mean, my first word wasn't mama, it was no. Right. No. So in servant leadership, a lot of people in this generation think, well, servant leadership, but what about me? What am I going to get? What am I going to get to do? And they don't understand that when you serve other people, your relationships are exponentially better. People's lives change. My wife is so good at this. She's got this amazing discernment that you can say something about your character and who you are. And by the way, side note, if you have to say something good about yourself, chances are you might need to check out from the neck up, because if you live your life a certain way, people are going to recognize it. They're going to be affected by it. And that's where the servant leadership part comes in. I can give you a big list on a sheet of paper, and both of you can as well, because you've been doing this a while. We can have all these attributes of servant leadership on a piece of paper. We can get in front of people and we can read the list, and you're supposed to do this. That's great. Giving people the information is only a microcosm of what they need. Right. So people need to see you living out. When you say it, that's great, but that's only the first half of the equation. The second half is, does he or she live that out? They have to be able to live it out. And so whatever arena people are in, whatever their profession, there's dads, there's moms, there's brothers, there's sisters, leading is a big calling. But servant leading isn't about giving up your rights. It's just about caring and listening and loving other people. And then you have to tie the bow around that of living your life based on how you speak. Because if the two don't match up, then people eventually aren't going to give you the time of day.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it makes me think about lots of companies, you walk into an office and you see motivational things, or like think back to the 80s when everybody had like that golf mural with like a quote of like, if you miss the shots, like the Wayne Gretzky quote.
That's right.
Right.
Anyone can have of the shots,
right, take. Exactly. Anybody can have those quotes up on their wall, or we can have core values and everything around our office.
Right.
But if we don't live those core values every single day, and in fact, if we don't live through those core values with every single conversation,
right,
with every single person that walks through this door, team members, guests, borrowers, clients,
right,
then we're liars, and right, we're fake.
Well, and like we say, everyone's always watching.
That's right.
I remember when I became a parent the first time, people were telling me they will always be watching you and they don't miss anything.
That's right.
And it's the same thing. I don't care what type of business that you're in, but like for us, what we've done a very good job of is, as we took you through a tour of the office and you see all of our different sayings, the ABCs and the TNTs, it takes no talent, but the people that think we're servants to are always watching us.
That's right.
So when we lay a certain, level of this is what we expect and everything like that, if we have someone on the team that doesn't meet those expectations, and if we don't address that, or if we just let it slide, you have the rest of the group that's looking at that and is like, oh, they really don't mean that though, do they?
Yeah.
Right. So we've had some tough conversations, but again, that's a reason why, over the years we've been successful, is because you set those expectations. But like you said, Les, you have to live those out.
You do. And isn't it a lot easier, gentlemen, to live free instead of being fake?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, the lie after the lie. I mean, you if you live that way where you don't live it out, but you talk it, you yourself, the very core of who you are, gets buried in all the fake and the lies and the smoke screen you're putting up there. And I call it the perfect masquerade. You're trying to be this perfect person, but again, if you're not living it out, not serving other people, that's a tough life, because more and more you get anxious. It's an old Judge Judy saying, don't lie, because then you don't have to worry about what you forgot.
Right.
So
Oh God.
yeah, it is so true. So they are watching,
Yep.
and some people will think, "Whoa, I never asked for that." Well, if you became a father, like you said, you kind of asked for that, even if you didn't use the words.
Right.
I'm just proud of the fact that I have a almost 21-year-old son and a 17-year-old son, and they both call me daddy still. They don't say dad. They don't say yo, hey, old man. They probably think it sometimes, but to be able to call me that, and my wife and I talk about this a lot because we've always been open with them and shown them grace, consequences, but with grace. But the idea has been to lead them. I can tell them all I want, but they're at the age now that they understand, and they won't follow the things that I teach them if my life doesn't match what I say. Right. So yeah, it's super important in life, in business, in friendships, and everything.
That's a perfect transition to what you do with breaking the norm and what you do with some of your coaching. So you take some of those lessons. I imagine we'd like you to speak that with what you do with your sons, right?
Yes.
I watch your videos on Facebook that you do with your group. Then you lead men. Mm-hmm. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and what it's meant to you and what it's meant to the gentlemen in particular? I know you have lots of listeners, females, males, but why don't you speak a little bit about what you do for leading men?
Sure. The Breaking the Norm show was just born out of 12 years. It's been, 12 years already. But 12 years ago, I was just listening to radio, just listening to sports radio. And it was negative. Right. And they were hammering on these people. And I really, even if it was wrong who they were talking about, or maybe they did something that wasn't right, it was a moral failure or character, lack of character, that's still a human being. Right. And they're not there to defend themselves. And it's how I learned to forgive my dad, because my dad was super abusive when I was a kid, left when I was 12, never saw him again. Wow. And so I carried that pain all the way through to my mid-30s until I went to counseling, and someone said, have you ever considered what your dad went through? And that unlocked it for me. Right. To learn about other people. What some people might do is not okay, but you can maybe help them, number one, understand it. But then number two, you can learn to be compassionate and show sympathy. And most people know they're hiding or they're in pain or something like that. And so I used a lot of those father wounds to lead men, because there are so many of us out there that have wounds, but we're big, we're tough, we're athletes, we're professionals in business. Down, right? Oh yeah. Well, people don't need to see my junk. They're not interested, and I'm tough and I can handle it. Well, from age 12 to like 38, I wasn't handling it at all. Right. And my wife saw it and she said, hey, you probably should talk to someone. There's no joy. So instead of being that victim, I'm going to play that victor role. And it's interesting. People say, oh, do you forgive your dad? Aren't you mad at your dad? I do forgive him. And if he was alive, I'd hug him and say, hey, I get it. Don't even say it. I get it, because I had to learn that my dad didn't know his dad, that my dad was abused by his mom. And she was an alcoholic, and he was left alone and didn't have any skills. He didn't go to college. He was kicked out of his house. So my dad, my biological father, gave me an incredible gift. And besides God, I credit him for showing me what not to do. Now, he didn't know he was doing it, right? But everything my dad did wrong, I did the opposite. And so I've got healthy, God-fearing, intelligent, loving, friendly, humble children, also because of their mother. But I've been able to learn those lessons and show them that mercy and grace. And so through my radio show, I wanted it to be positive. Let's just go with positive stories. We don't need negative, because there's enough negative in the world. As soon as you turn your phone on, your computer, your TV, whatever it may be, conversations on the radio, conversations in the mall or at the store. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to be positive with the radio show, and it was a 1-month experiment. And then here we are 12 years later. And on the coaching men, men are called to be the leader of their home, biblically. Now, that doesn't mean they're the boss of their home. Right. Trust me. My bride carries more weight in my house. She's only 95 pounds, but she carries more weight in my house than anything. Right. But there are so many men out there that their wives or their future wives are waiting for them to step up and be a strong leader, and not be perfect, but be a strong leader, just to step in, to lean in, to learn, to grow, to admit their mistakes and be humble. And so I teach that through men's coaching. I help their minds get decluttered, help them get organized, come to the table and try to learn to be humble so you can talk to it and break down those walls. In the servant leadership, I do some servant leadership consulting for some different companies, and we do 6 sessions. So it's 1 3-hour session a month for 6 months. And people come into those a little skeptical because they say, or they hear servant leadership. Oh, okay, what am I going to have to do? My rights are gone.
Right, here we go.
But the first 3 sessions are all about how to become the best version of yourself. And you do that by investing in yourself. That's not selfish, because if I'm anxious, if I'm angry, if I'm frustrated, and I take that out on my wife and my kids,
right,
but I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm hurting their heart. I'm not leading. And so it helps them to become better, not by my judgment, but themselves. They can see that they're more than what they think they are. Behind every face, there's a drama unfolding. We're all hiding. Right. So in men's coaching, in the radio show, and in the servant leadership consulting I do, it's helping people see their worth, their value, and then living their life out along that vein versus trying to live up to something that they can't even live up to in their own mind and heart. And that's what breeds the anxiety and the fear and lack of self-control.
Well, that turning point of almost giving people permission to be vulnerable, to let things out, goes back to the thing, your wife saying, hey, Les, why don't you go talk to someone about that?
Yeah.
And that literally, like you said, unlocked everything and completely changed your life, right?
Yeah, that's when the joy started.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's wild. I mean, you've said a couple big things that I think we should touch on. But the idea that you can't take care of others unless you've taken care of yourself, I think that's a huge point that a lot of people miss. And I think a lot of, let's say parents in particular with young children, they get so caught up in serving their children and the young people in their homes that a lot of times they forget to take care of their spouse, take care of themselves.
Right.
And the kids become the sole focus. I think a lot of people can relate to that ideal. And then their marriages suffer, their relationships suffer, their work suffers, taking care of their physical self, their mental self. That's really important to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. It is.
Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of couples, you got to be husband and wife first, right? You're going to be mom and dad for, a really highlighted, you're always going to be a mom and dad.
Right.
But when they turn 18, as or 22 and they move on, I remember going through high school and seeing a lot of my friends' parents split after high school, right? Because they just became parents, right? And then they didn't have anything in common and they kind of went away. But, I'm listening to this whole conversation and, how fortunate your sons are because, man, if we could all go back in time and be a young man and have someone, a mentor or a parent or someone at church say, hey, it's not all about you, right? It's not all about you. It's about other people and helping them. And, like you said, it's all about the name on the front of the jersey.
Yeah. Interesting. And real quick, there was a guy that he was on the school board where I grew up. And this is after my dad left and my mom wasn't around much. My sister was off doing her thing. So I dove into sports. And so diving into baseball, I was still an angry kid, no father figure around, just angry, not trusting guys. And there was a guy that came to a game. I got like 3 hits in the game, but I struck out twice. It was a long game, had 5 at bats. And so after the game, I was mad. Again, you're 15, 16. I'm not too far removed and right in the angry, I know everything, leave me alone stage. Right. So he comes up to me after the game and said, hey, Les, my name is Chuck. I'm on the school board. And I said, yes, Mr. Kuchar, I know who you are. And he said, hey, I want you to know you had a great game. Like, did you not see the 2 strikeouts? And so I wanted to assume on him that I had a bad game. He's like, no, and he had 2 sons.
Right.
But he was there watching our game.
Right.
And a couple times in high school in basketball, he would keep score or he would just show up at games. And I knew both of his sons. But he always encouraged me with little things, never a conversation or something like that. So fast forward to May 29th of 1995. I get called up. And the next night we're at home in Kansas City. I joined him on the road in Milwaukee. But the next night we came to Kansas City. So in the 7th inning, I went into left field at Kauffman as a defensive replacement. And in the mid-90s, we were kind of like things are going now, probably a little bit worse.
Right.
And
you probably could hear the fans in the stands.
Well, that's the whole point.
Right.
Because I looked up and down the left field line, there was nobody there except one guy. So I'm throwing my warm-up tosses, just looking around. And all of a sudden, I see some guy sitting by himself. And he's going, just waving at me. And fans do that, especially the college kids who are a little bit happier than when the game started. And I look and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And it was Chuck.
Wow.
The same guy. He read in the paper that I just got called up, immediately booked a flight just to show up to let me know that he was there for me.
No.
Now I'm 26 now. It's, it's all these years later. It's 11 years later.
Right.
But he didn't tell me he was coming. We hadn't talked in a month or so, occasional phone call.
Right.
But that's the leadership stuff we're talking about. Wow. That's the love and the care. And I'll never forget it because my biological father didn't see it. And my stepdad had come to a game or two, but it was a different relationship. But yeah, man, Chuck just showed up.
That's right. Because he wasn't living in Kansas City.
No, he lived back in Joliet, Illinois.
Shout out to Chuck. That's awesome. Yeah. Last week we did a show with Duke and Dina, and we did a show the week before, just DC and I talking about the people that have made lasting impressions on our lives. Mm-hmm. And we both grew up also in at some point broken homes, right? Mm-hmm. And parents split up.
Well, it's common, isn't it?
It really is common. And actually, which is a little scary how closely aligned you and I are, the 12 to 38 thing. We can talk a little bit about that later, but having, especially for people that do have broken homes, having those people that you can gravitate to, that you can count on to uplift you. Actually, DC and I, we have an expression. We have lots of expressions, but we have an expression about the people that lift us up. We call them elevator people. Yeah. And you want to surround yourself with more elevator people and fewer basement people.
That's right.
People that pull you down to the basement just because they need the company, because they're hanging out down low. Yeah. And so we try to always, obviously, be elevator people for others, but not only that, but surround ourselves with other elevator people to where we look up to them. Mm-hmm. And essentially, even though we're in our 40s, we still look for guidance. We still look for positive people to make sure that we can be led so that we can continue to lead people and always be positive.
That's a perfect example of humility, understanding we will become who we hang out with. We will become who we spend the most time with.
Maybe the most valuable lesson ever.
Absolutely. And at the right stage, at the right time, I was teaching both of my sons, what type of person are you? And they'd tell me. I said, okay, what type of person are your friends? The 2 or 3 people you hang out with the most. Right. And then I would ask them, do those 2 match? And both times it was, well, not really. Mm-hmm. And so I'd let them know, go look in the mirror, look at the person that you are, and let's think about why you're that way. And the number one reason is because of the people you surround yourself with. Right. And I have to preach that too to myself. I've got to look in the mirror and do that as well. Again, people like you lift me up. So we can all do that for each other. So it is so unbelievably important to make sure you do that.
It is. One of the things that we always like to do, whether it's here or our buddies or Royals Fantasy Camp, which is literally one of the best things that we've ever done, is we always tell people, hey, we're going to be on the sidelines with pom-poms cheering you on, right?
That's right.
Let's go, right? Because, you just don't hear that enough. And we take pride as giving this, because as far as like partners or whether they are work for us or whatever, they just want to be around that, right? And people want to be around leaders that have that servant leadership. And it's talk about, and we can talk about a little bit about Royals Fantasy Camp, but literally one of the best things. And in fact, we try to invite as many of our buddies to that event that you guys do such an amazing job on, because that right there, I think, is a life-changing event for a lot of the guys that come, because again, you're surrounding yourselves with other people who are like-minded, who are positive. They think it's about baseball, but it's really about the fellowship and the people and the friends that you meet over the years.
And sometimes and you guys have been there enough, so you get it right away. But first year or second year guys at fantasy camp don't realize it till they're on the plane on the way home.
Oh yeah.
Or when they get home. Right. And they're thinking, I miss those guys. Oh man, I want to hang, and they stay in touch. And these, miles across the country don't separate the relationships that are built.
Oh my gosh.
During fantasy camp.
I mean, we're going to weddings. We're going to funerals of parents and things like that. In fact, this is probably a good point to show one of my favorite pictures. It was my second year of fantasy camp. This is awesome. Do you know what it is?
I think I'll recognize it when I see it.
Right. All right. So here we go. This is my favorite picture.
Make sure that's outstanding. I didn't know you had that.
I sure do. Second year of fantasy camp.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Fortunate enough to make a good catch, and Mr. Les Norman comes off the field and
awesome.
jumps in my arms. But yeah, man, that's hanging downstairs over our bar.
Oh man.
And my wife, Chili Pepper, who she's like, oh my gosh, you've got to take
that. That is awesome,
Les,
dude.
right?
I love that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes,
right?
I love that. That's outstanding. I'm glad I didn't break your back.
I know, right?
It looks like you were leaning back, like I got a running start.
Well, I was a few years younger, so
right. we all were,
right? Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In that, like personally, I'll be honest, complete vulnerable moment. When I got back from camp the first time, first of all, we went from camp straight to the Super Bowl for the Chiefs, right? So there was like an extra 3 days of
a fun year there
of elation.
It was a great 10 days.
Yeah.
But getting back and like so often do when great things end, right? That's when you can reflect. But I was emotional. I mean, I was home and I was thinking about, of course, you think about the baseball. And I said this on stage last year.
Mm-hmm.
I went for the baseball, and then it became about everything else.
Right.
And baseball, like, literally gets pushed to the bottom of the list. And being able to hang out today with you, and being able to, like DC said, go to weddings, go to funerals. Like, even though that's such a sad thing, that's a special thing that we are there to support one another through major life events.
Right.
Like it's a fraternity. It's a fellowship.
Yeah.
It's not like the fraternity in terms of like, college and party and like we're going to hang out and get wasted. It's a fraternity for a lifetime of brotherhood and love. It's just absolutely special.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. You had Dina on and Duke.
We did.
And this is one thing that I don't think Dina understands how well done fantasy camp is and how good it is for everybody. She's doing it to make everybody having this incredible experience.
Right.
And she does it every time. There's no one better than Dina Blevins at getting at her job now and her job in fantasy camp. Right. But what I hope Dina realizes is that in all of our, whether you're an alumni or a camper that goes to fantasy camp, all these relationships, all these memories that are created, Dina has her thumbprint on it.
Yeah,
she's part of the dominoes that fall to the end. And so, all of those listening, if you know Dina, send her an email, send her a text, give her a shout out, because she just maybe feels like I'm just doing the very best job. We all know how hard she works down there. She loses sleep. She's a mom of 2 active young daughters and has had her trials and tragedies in life. But there are people that will be friends forever and share and be able to surround themselves with the people, those elevator people. She's facilitating that. So Dina, if you're listening, we love you, and we couldn't have this stuff that we do without you.
Yeah, literally. We've made some of our best friends in life straight from that.
That's it.
There was a question. There was a topic you said earlier that I thought was really, really profound. When people go through negative things in life, trials and tribulations that we all have, like you said, behind every face is a drama unfolding. You said that your dad leaving, he gave you a gift,
huge gift,
and I'd like for you to expand on that, because when people go through really rough times, and the first thing is not to say, and obviously it wasn't your first thing when you said either, right? It took you decades to come up with that philosophy. But for people to go through something so challenging and difficult, and then to be able to shift your mind to say, thank goodness that happened to me so that I could grow from it. Like, holy cow. Yeah. That's heavy.
Yeah. If you ask the majority of people about their character, about themselves, they'll tell you good things. They may say a flaw or two, but most of them will say good things because they don't want to look bad. We want as a human being, we want people to like us. We want to be in someone's favor. Not that we want anything from them, but we want to be looked good upon. We don't want to be cast aside.
Don't look bad.
Yeah. One of the fears, this innate fear we have, is the fear of being alone, not accepted, measuring up, especially us guys, even at the age that we're at. I mean, I'm 53 and I still have that. Am I enough? Am I doing okay? And so I had to really realize through some counseling how to look at people that hurt me, people that harm me, and know that I'm enough because of who I was created to be, not what someone like my dad, whom I've trusted and everything, says I am or lived out that I was. I mean, he called me worthless, a worthless piece of what. I'd build Lincoln logs in the middle of the floor, and he would practice his extra points. He'd sneak up behind me and just kick it and shatter it across the room. And I have an older sister, so I'll just say that I got it the easiest in our house. She got it, her and my mom got it the worst.
Right.
So learning the life lesson, being able to humble yourself, really unlocks the door for healing. It unlocks the door to, and being humble is not being less than. It's not that you're less than somebody else. Right. Being humble is just leaving yourself open and know, hey, I've made mistakes. I failed. People have hurt me, but it doesn't have to end there. It doesn't define who I am. And so just learning about my dad's background, helping me understand what he had to go through, that he battled, life wasn't enough. Once I became aware of that, it became my responsibility to lift up a legacy that he blew. He didn't have a good legacy. But if I tear him down my whole life and his memory, what good does that do anybody? Because his blood runs through my son's veins.
Absolutely.
They never met him.
Right.
They only know. And if I go to my sons and just continue, your grandfather, your biological grandfather was this big jerk, and don't ever think positive about him. I'm teaching my children to hate somebody that makes mistakes. I'm taking the ability to share grace and compassion and sympathy away from them. Now, I also have to tell them, well, this is what he did, and so these are the consequences of it. He was an alcoholic and blind and had cirrhosis of the liver because of drinking so much, and he ended up sometime trying to cross a road in the middle of the night, got hit by a car, and was killed. Oh my! It was down in Texas. I didn't know about it until 3-4 years later because he didn't call any of us. Right. But again, it simply comes down to understanding who you are, understanding whose you are, and not playing that victim all the time. No matter what the negative things that happen to you, something good can come out of it if you're willing to search down that road.
Well, and also you're teaching your sons, because if you're to continually, put down your dad, psychologically, they're like, well, that's my grandfather and I have the same blood.
Yeah.
So what does that do to me? Am I less than now too?
Right.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And also I'm sure there's some compassion in there, even though he was obviously not a good father, but he never had someone step in to be a role model that could turn that switch for him to stop that probably generational handing down.
Absolutely.
Of abuse,
That's a great call, DC. Yeah.
Right.
Again, people will ask me, how can you say you forgive your dad? Or when I say something, like I said earlier, like I wouldn't change a thing. And I wouldn't change one smack, one whip of a tree branch, nothing, none of those words, because, we would do anything for our kids. We would do anything for our spouses, anything for the people that we love. I would do anything for my boys. And if that means my dad didn't get it right, but I'm the bridge for them to get it early on and to think back, and mom and dad cared. They loved me. Dad coached me. He taught me. When I failed, he didn't cast me aside. He showed me grace. He taught me through it, but he never stopped loving me. Those are the valuable lessons. So I was plucked out of its generation, allowed to become a bridge so my sons can be the start of a new generation. So the dominoes that fall after my sons are there's where the whole good legacy is going to leave. And so if I had to go through that, so my future grandkids and great grandkids can live, sorry for the emotion, but wow, that just came out of nowhere, but it's worth it all. It's worth every second of it.
Bro, that's like literally one of the most powerful things ever, man. It's not about, being an awesome show host and former major leaguer and stuff. But that's the real stuff. Is leaving the legacy and having those dominoes for generations, even when we're long gone, you're leaving, that legacy of generations that you're affecting families, decades down the line, dude. That's epic.
I think there's a Les Norman quote that sums up everything that you just talked about. And it's, I used the wrong roadmap to find the right places.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's a quote that's on your website.
It is.
And I don't know if that's an original Les Norman quote. I had never read it or heard it before. And
I didn't get it from anywhere. It was something that came to my mind.
Instantly, when I think people hear that or read that, I mean, at least I did, I immediately started thinking about all the shit that went wrong in my life, right? And how it helped me get to where I'm at today. Absolutely. And I was like, oh, wow, like that roadmap was really messed up. but I'm in a pretty good place now.
Mhm.
I'm in a good place. I'm in the right place.
Right.
And the roads, it's not easy to get down that road to get to that place. It is really tough because we were victims at the time, and we got treated poorly and abused in some way or made feel some negative emotions. So there is counseling that maybe need to happen, or just years of just recovering from it and learning from it. But again, if you can get to a point where you get that help and you really can get to the other side of it, there is not an ounce of me. I mean, if someone that knew my dad were to talk him down, it would be borderline, okay, we're going to fight. Right. Because, well, wait a minute, he did all those things to you. Yeah, but he was still my dad. And if you look at my kids and see how they are, he showed me, I can get to California with a map of Rhode Island. It just shows me to head in the opposite direction.
Right.
So let me ask you this. So for some of the listeners that, this is really resonating with, or maybe there's some people out there that have some things that they would like to work through, like what would you suggest? Where would you point them in terms of getting with someone or life coaching or something like, what would you suggest they do? Because again, this can completely change people's lives, and kudos to you, man. You are like the definition of ABC. Always be cool, man. So what would you say to those folks?
Well, we do this exercise. This all started, I interviewed a guy on my radio show, and he was one of the original American Gladiators, like way back. Yes. Nice. And so by the end, one of the questions that I like is I'm trying to make the listeners think about who they are, look past what's in the mirror and get inside the brain and get inside the heart and start laying those things like just a deck of cards, one at a time. Lay them out on the table. You don't have to throw all 52 out right away. Get a couple of them. And then the next day, get a couple more. And so at the end of the show, I asked him, I said, when you look in the mirror, not the physical, because he's 6'5", 320, and it's all yokedness. So yokedness. So I said, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And this 6'5", 320-pound former superstar started crying on the air. And this is when I was doing these shows live.
Right.
So we ended the show and I talked to him, and it was at that moment that I realized, man, there are people out there that, not because I say so, but for their own health and their families and their loved ones' health, need to strip that junk down, need to get through the layers. And so one of the things we do in the servant leadership in these businesses is I'll put one of the people, everybody's got to go through it, hand them a box of Kleenex, put them in a chair facing me while all their peers are sitting around them, but they can't look at them. They can only look at me. Right. And I asked them, say, okay, not what you see physically, but when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And every one of them loses it. I've had grown men start crying before I even asked the question because they've been watching other people.
Right, and they anticipate it.
And they anticipate and they go, oh, man, now I got to be vulnerable. But we don't just leave them there. So they'll tell me, they'll break down and they'll strip it. And they feel like, oh, my gosh, I'm a crying mess. And I can't believe I just said all that. And then I turn the chair around, and one by one, all the people around them get to say something to affirm them. Wow. So it's the mirrors and speak life exercise. And it is a 100% success rate because people will seek counseling. That's a success. People will start to listen, not in an arrogant way, but, I do have something to offer. I do have people that love me. I have elevator people right here in the office that will lift me up. And so, in that coaching, I'm just trying to help these people understand through that exercise that they're going to be okay, that they are valuable, they are worthy. And you are not based on what someone says about you or what someone did to you that hurt you, even some of those consequences that you might still have to deal with, whether it's financial or emotional or whatever. And then to tie that whole thing up, it's not about what they say. It's not about what happened. It's about who you were created to be. And you have more of a choice to mold that than somebody else and what they say.
I think that's awesome. I think the poster that's around our office, the one that's right behind you right now, DC, summarizes that exactly.
I noticed that when we came in right there. I'm like, I love that.
We've got about 3 of them hanging around.
We do. It's our constant reminder to ourselves, because we're vulnerable and not everyone is our champion, right?
Not everyone's cheering for us.
Not everyone's cheering for us. And so it's a reminder that sometimes when we feel a little beat up or we don't feel worthy, that, we're strong, and, lions don't really care about sheep's opinions. And I know some people don't really like that quote, but if you've got somebody that's trying to tear you down, That's not a supporter. That's a sheep, and a lion really does not give two thoughts about that sheep's opinions.
Right.
Well, and again, it's protecting who you have in your life, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Have those elevator people
Absolutely.
around lifting you up all the time.
And DC, you had mentioned something a little while ago too about the whole dynamic of kids and raising kids. When my kids got to age 12, that was the magic age that I started to say this, that when they crossed their mother, that, okay, now you're not disrespecting your mom.
Right.
You're disrespecting my wife. And so they have to understand that mama came first, and that's another manhood lesson that we've learned. And so if they say something and a little sarcastic or snippy,
right.
all I need to do is lean in like, really? Like, oh, mom, I'm sorry.
That's your teammate. That's your teammate.
Absolutely. And she's a lot better looking than some of my older teammates too.
Right.
So yeah, it's just that lesson, like you said, DC, it's about protecting those that we love that are in our home. And I love that quote. Lions do not care about sheep's opinions. Oof, that's so good. I'm going to get me one of them.
Right. Hey, you know, we probably can help with that.
We might actually, yeah,
right.
We'll look into that. That's cool. Well, why don't we pivot a little bit? And we're getting close to the end. So why don't we talk about some funny stuff? Like maybe you can share some funny stories, or share a funny story about your time in the bigs or your time in the minors or fantasy camp, or just something that involves something that always makes you smile when you think about baseball.
Right.
Yeah. The first one I think that comes to mind right away is the day I got called up. I got set up by, usually there's a little trick that happens, but I got set up by the entire Royals organization. And you
got punked?
I got punked.
Did you?
Hard. Yes.
Really?
So we're in,
yes. Yeah. Let's go.
So we're in AAA. We're in Omaha, and Mike Jersley, the former Royals third base coach, was our manager.
Oh, nice.
And I can't remember who we were playing, but it was like the sixth inning, and we were just laying it to this other team. I mean, I think I had 4 hits that game. The guy behind me had 5 hits that game, and it's only the 7th inning, and there's no 10-run rule in pro baseball.
Right.
So, we once won a game in Nashville 25-5 that took 5 hours. I went 6 for 8 that game and was only the 3rd best hitter in our lineup. Somebody went 7 for 8, and somebody went 8 for 8, and we hit like 13 home runs as a team.
But didn't it feel good, though?
Oh, my gosh. Awesome. Now I've been many times. It seems like I'm patting myself in the back there, but I've been on the other side of that many times. So you got to enjoy them.
Right.
So we're in Omaha. There's 2 outs. I'm leading off first base, and again, we're up by 10, 15 runs. We're not going to steal. Right? We're wearing these guys out. And so Keith Hughes is up, and he lines out, but I just did a secondary lead, 2 outs. I round second. Guy catches it. Okay, we're out of the inning. So I get to third base, and I hand my helmet and my gloves to Jersh. I'm playing right field. Hughes playing center, or flip-flop. I'm in center. Hughes in right. And I said, Keith, did you see a sign by chance? Because when I got to Jersh, he's like, did you see the hit and run? I'm like, shut up, dude, in a friendly way. I'm like, shut up, man. Come on. We're up like 12, 15 runs. You're not giving no hit and run. You start a brawl.
Right.
And he had the straight face like he wasn't kidding. I'm like, are you serious? Dude, there's no way. But let's talk about it after the inning. So I go out and I said, Keith, we're playing catch to warm up. I said, did you get a hit and run sign from Jersh? And he said the same thing I said. We're up 15 runs. He didn't give a hit and run sign.
Right.
So I made a beeline for Jersh after that inning was over. I mean, straight to him like, Husey said the same thing. You didn't give a hit and run sign. And he said, Husey couldn't find his you-know-what if he were in a paper bag. He doesn't know. And he was getting mad. And so now I'm getting mad because I know he didn't give the hit and run sign because of the baseball unwritten rules.
Sure.
Right.
And what I didn't realize, though, is I wanted to fire back on him. But in the dugout is our minor league coordinator in town, Joe Jones. Duke was in there.
Okay.
So he was the roving pitching guy. Our head scout was in the dugout, and then like 2 other big wigs that were roving guys in the organization.
Some brass in there.
Huge brass. And by this time I was doing really well, but I didn't think I was getting called up yet. Right. So this is in May. So the game is over. We're all hooping, hollering, big win. I'm literally don't get a visual here, but I'm getting undressed. My pants, my sliding shorts, my jogging cup are on, but my pants are down around my ankles. I'm getting ready to get in the shower. Right. And Jersh slams the door to his office, and everybody's like, whoa. It's like, Norman, get in here. And I'm thinking, he's still mad about that? I know you
missed the sign?
I'm a grown man. I know he didn't do that.
Right.
And so I come back with this little smart aleck comment like, well, my pants are around my ankles. I mean, can you wait till I get undressed, or do you need me to come in? I mean, I have to shower. What do you need, Skipper? It's like, that mouth is going to get you in trouble someday, son. Get in my office right now. And everybody's looking around like, what in the world's up with that dude? You got to be. And Jersh is loved by so many.
Right?
He's not like that at all.
Right.
I'm thinking, is he just showing off for the brass, or is he like worried about getting fired? Whatever.
Right.
Great. I'm the scapegoat. I don't have any big league time. I've got no bargaining power here, and I'm doing this for like $2,400 a month. You got to be kidding me, before taxes. So I turned the corner in his office. There's an empty chair in the middle of the room, and all the brass is sitting in a semicircle around the empty chair. And Jersh sits down and slams the door behind me, thinking, well, this career was fun.
This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
This
will be a great finishing story for someone down the road. I'll just pay my ticket to go to big league games.
So you thought you were being straight up cut.
I thought I was getting released. Wow. Now, again, I'm hitting 380 playing every day. So maybe they just didn't like my attitude. I don't
confused.
know. I was severely confused, no little about it. So I sit down and say, Jersh, let me start by apologizing. I'll be honest with you. I think I'm right about the sign thing. However,
I'm going to apologize, but you're wrong.
I'm going to apologize in my passive-aggressive way to say, you're a jerk, you're wrong, but I'm sorry.
Right.
So again, a little lack of humility there, a little lack of understanding. Right. But I said, but the way I came at you, especially in front of our team, was very disrespectful. I did not follow the chain of command. I should have just listened and talked it out, but listened first. The greatest example of a servant leader listens first.
Start with why.
Yes. So I said, that's all I have to say. I'll take whatever punishment you have. And he looks at me and he says, well, that's a good thing you're taking that stance, because tomorrow in Kansas City, if you do that, you'll end up right back here. And I said, yeah, you know what?
Wait, what?
Well, say that again. Like, this was a joke. I know I didn't give you a hit and run sign. We just and then they all start laughing. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. He's like, and he just pushes the phone forward and said, you're probably going to want to call your family. You just got called up to the big leagues. Congratulations.
Oh, man.
And I started bawling in the chair. I mean, I lost my mind.
Right.
Called my mom, called my stepdad. My stepdad still owns this tavern in Wilmington, Illinois. And he held the phone up and he had a tavern full of people like, you got the call. And everybody's cheering and screaming and I'm crying. And I have to compose myself, because you're going back out into a clubhouse where everybody wants to get called up.
Right.
2 or 3 guys, your closest buddies, are happy for you, but everybody else is like, damn. And all of a sudden, that should have been me. Mm-hmm. And then there's a couple people that then will ostricize you for the next 20 minutes because they're the ones that want to get called up. Not everybody in a clubhouse is
not
a
everybody's your cheerleader.
That's right. Not everybody is.
That's full circle on that lesson.
Some people are holding pom-poms. Some people are holding pepper spray. So
there you go. We'll add that one.
Do we have permission to say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some people are holding pom-pom. Yeah, that's why I said it.
Wow.
Some people are holding pom-poms. Some people are holding pepper spray. So I compose myself and go outside. And it was – I ended up going to Milwaukee, which I'm originally from the Chicago area. Mm-hmm. They were on the road their last game, but they just flew me in there. And Mike McFarland made me go out and catch Kevin Apier. And he's got like 7 different sliders, and he was mad because when he pitches, don't touch his stuff. Gubaza had to be in the dugout. Don't talk to him. Like OCD routine, not routine. Right. I mean, like, if you touch his glove, he will burn it after the game. And then, I mean, he's that kind of like, leave my stuff and me alone. That's just how he was.
Wow.
And I'm just dropping balls. But I thought they were doing it to rag on me. But what they were really doing was they knew that I had 50 people coming to the game just to see me in my first big league uniform.
Okay.
My parents were there. My sister was there. My high school coach was there. My college coach, teammates, friends were all up in Milwaukee back at the old stadium before they switched to the National League.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So, it was an interesting and very, very cool story, very humbling story. But I still took away from that, not just the getting called up factor. I took away from that, dude, you need to be humble at all times.
Right.
Humility cannot come selectively. So always learning, man. And that's just one of many. There's another time I was on the DL sitting in the clubhouse. So the game was going on. Jeff Montgomery comes in and he had just blown a lead, a rare time that Jeff Montgomery blows a lead. Right. And so he comes in and the spread table's out and there's hard plates. He took a plate and didn't see me, and my locker was kind of caddy corner behind this stone pillar, and he whips it. I mean, Monty's a little dude, had a good arm.
Oh yeah,
and he threw that frisbee like plate across the room. It hit the wall or hit that stone pillar with such force that a fragment went through my jeans and stuck in my knee.
Oh, you're kidding!
I'm a rookie, man. I'm deathly afraid, and I just like pull it out, put my finger on it to keep the bleeding down till the game's over. I don't want Monty to feel bad. I mean, that was fine. It was just a tiny little scrape.
Right.
So then he's in there. He's fuming. He's throwing stuff. He's mad. We end up tying the game. So Monty's going to go back out. And so Monty reaches, because he'd already taken his jersey off. So he reaches down in the bin and puts on a Pichardo jersey and doesn't know it and takes off.
Hippolito
Pichardo. Yeah.
So he's running out the clubhouse.
He's running down the tunnel, and then all of a sudden our clubhouse guy, Mike Burkhalter, runs after him like, I got to see this man bleeding from the knee or not. So I run down and I chase him to find out, like, that'll be hilarious if he takes the field in a Pichardo jersey. Right as he gets to the top step, Burkhalter grabs him and pulls him back down and then hands him his jersey, and he flips it off, and then he goes back out there. We end up winning the game.
Wow. That's amazing. They should have just let him go.
Gotta let him go. At least throw one pitch.
Right.
So get on Sports Center. Yeah.
So did you ever tell Monty, like, bro, I got like 18 stitches in my knee?
He doesn't even remember the entire incident. He's just so intense and focused. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm like, dude, I don't care. I was in the big leagues. You're Jeff Montgomery. I'd have given you the other knee to throw a plate at. That's fine. So yeah, it was. Those were some intense times, but there's so many things, flights and hotels and clubhouse stuff and BP stuff. It was just all a blast.
That's cool.
That's one of the favorite things. We love hanging out with guys like you, Les. It's the stories, man.
Yeah, I don't miss the games. I really don't miss the physical part because my body hurts a lot.
Sure.
And I still have some joints that aren't completely attached, but the one thing, and I don't even miss the pay. I mean, being a big leaguer is great money wise, and the travel, and you're playing a game you love. I just miss the guys. I miss hanging out. I miss the rain delays in the dugout, sliding on the tarp, playing cards. Wally Joyner beating me 3 games in a row, ping pong, 21-0, all 3 games. I mean,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, he was a freakish good
Forrest
athlete.
Gump of ping pong.
He might have beat Forrest Gump. He's that good. Yeah. So
Awesome.
It was just a blast.
Well, it's similar to what we were saying about even at our level with fantasy camp.
Right.
Like, it's not about the baseball. Like, you don't miss the games. You miss the fraternity. You miss playing cards. You miss hanging out with your buddies.
The conversation from the clubhouse to field 6.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's exactly right. Walking up and back. So
it's about getting out the car, the next morning after the first day, and everyone's grunting and can hardly get out. And it's just, again, it's not about being sore and getting out there and, even striking out or whatever. But dude, it's all about talking trash, playing cards, sitting next to Billy Butler, who
cussing up
a storm and playing cards. And so no, man, it's amazing.
Yeah. There's one more thing about fantasy camp, Cope, that I want you to understand too, is, there are some guys that go to fantasy camp to get away. They're escaping. They work hard for their money. It's not cheap to go, and they want to get around and just hang around with guys, because when they come back to the real world, it could be a marriage, or it could be trouble at work, or they just need a week to get away. Okay. And I always notice the little things, Bobby, I notice and love your humility and the teammate that you are, and the way you talk to people and the way you open up to people. You're an exceptional athlete. You both are exceptional athletes, but being an MVP of fantasy camp, it's kind of a big deal. There's 100 and some guys there, and you're younger than a lot of them, but they're good athletes, and you earned that. That was a vote from everybody. And Cope, one of the things that I love about you is that when your bride comes down, the way your bride seeks you out, the way you respond to her, and she's the boss. We know, mine is too. We're all 3 of us. We know,
right.
But the way you could be sweaty, stinky, go for 4 or 4. You've probably never gone 0 for 4 in a fantasy camp game, but just in case if you had a bad game and you're hard on yourself, so you could get 3 hits like me, and then you'd think of the 4th at bat. Right. But you're holding your wife's hand on the way back in, or you're putting your arm around her, or people see that, and you're not doing that on purpose. You're doing that because you genuinely love your bride, and you foster that relationship, and you take care of her. If I see her before I leave and I ask her something about you, that's going to be the truth of what's about you. And if you want to know how good a husband or a boyfriend is doing, look at the joy or lack of joy on their spouse or girlfriend's face. I've never seen your wife frown. Now, we're all human beings. We all have our times.
Right.
But whenever she's there, whenever I've seen her, she is a bundle of joy. That's because she's a woman of faith. She is a joyful person, but she wouldn't be that joyful all the time around you if you weren't being the husband that you are. So you both bring great things to the table. Don't forget that, because that leaves an indelible mark on people.
Appreciate that,
Thank
brother.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well,
Elevator people.
That's right, baby. That's right.
Man.
I think that's a good way to wrap it up. If people want to find you and listen to Breaking the Norm and even reach out to you about coaching and leadership, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, my website is it's with one S. It's just less@lessnorman.com. Not an ego thing. It was just available.
Yeah.
It's the name I got, so it's the name I'll use. So yeah, it's just less@lessnorman.com is the email, and then the website is lessnorman.com. And I actually think I have my phone number on there, which is fine. I'm not worried about it. You know, if something goes bad, I've never had to change my number in all these years. So yeah, it's just 913-908-6183. Or lessnorman.com is the place to go.
That's awesome, brother. Man, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
You guys, this was fun. You guys are good at this. I'm sweating bullets. I'm getting in here. My gray T-shirt's like going to turn into a dark gray T-shirt.
And also, thank you for being a mentor for us and saying, hey, you need to think about this, and this.
For the podcast.
I'll tell you what, you guys are really good at this. This was fun. This 5 minutes into this thing, did we go like an hour?
An hour and 10 minutes.
Wow, that's awesome.
Right.
But 5 minutes into this thing, this was just a conversation with really weird headpieces on. So but yeah, you guys are fantastic, and you need to keep doing this.
Yeah,
awesome,
thanks very
bro.
much.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for listening, guys. This is the ABC Podcast. Find us where you can listen and watch podcasts everywhere at Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and follow us on social media.
Awesome. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.